Welcome everybody. Thank you for your time and attention. I'll talk a little bit about what Mendeley does, or what we are, how it works, for those who don't know yet exactly what we actually do and how the system works from a technological point of view, what the concept is behind of that. As a second step, then I will drop a few notes and thoughts around, okay, what's the wider impact potentially on publishing, and what's the involvement of, the social aspect to that, and some ideas maybe for publishers. And then lastly, I will show you a couple of screenshots of a new product that we have launched recently, which is targeted at institutions. It's called Mendeley Institutional Edition. And it's a dashboard product that provides insights and analytics based on social behavior on Mendeley's platform. And we're obviously thinking about providing a similar product for publishers because there are similar needs, just a little bit different view on the database. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of what's probably coming up the next 2-3 years. The way Mendeley works is you have a researcher, has a lot of documents and papers, and they can drag and drop these papers into Mendeley Desktop, which is an application that you can install on your computer. It's cross-platform, works on Mac, Linux, and Windows, and we have mobile applications as well. Some of them actually developed by third-party developers that make use of our open API. I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes as well. So this is already some really nice development that we can see by giving data out to developers. They build something nice with it. If you drag and drop the PDF documents into Mendeley as an application, the system will then extract metadata and full text from these PDF documents to help the researchers set up their digital library quickly and automatically, so you don't need to type in data anymore. And researchers can then also organize and annotate their papers. There's an integrated PDF viewer. You can make highlights and sticky notes, and also collaborate in a team. You can share this with your team. You can collaboratively create a digital library. You can, comment on documents and stuff like that. And eventually, sorry, it seems to be are we moving forward? Sorry for that, I don't know what went wrong there, but in any case, eventually what Mendeley then does, it aggregates all that activity in the cloud. This is a screenshot from Mendeley Desktop. It shows you, it's a kind of an iTunes-like organization system. It shows you the references, you have collections, you have quick filters that you can set up, and we have real-time search, so it's search as you type, and then it will narrow down the search results. This is the screenshot from the full-text PDF viewer with highlights and sticky notes. So it's really geared towards increasing the individual researcher's productivity and the productivity of a group of researchers. We allow also researchers to import manually data from a lot of publisher websites, a lot of databases, so you can go on the publisher website and then click a little import button, import to Mendeley, and then the data will relatively easily and quickly move over to your Mendeley library, where it then lives, and from where you then can cite for your own manuscripts and documents. And because we aggregate all that information, we can create implicit user profiles based on what people are reading and how they're interacting with their content. And we've then developed on the right-hand side, you can see that here in the screenshot, a personal recommendation feature, which we call Mendeley Suggest, which basically compares your library across the whole user base and compares it with the libraries of other people, and then tells you what you should be reading because other people are reading similar stuff. And this works because we aggregate all this activity anonymously in the cloud, so we combine all these little intelligent databases into one central database. And this drives a very powerful first way of different discovery engine, which is Mendeley Suggest, and we can see that this is really well accepted. So we have some statistics that show that once you have added roughly 20 articles to your library, if we then deliver 10 recommendations, the users generally accept between 6 and 8 out of those 10 recommendations. And that obviously helps to drive content, helps to drive usage. And the more the Mendeley system knows about the universe of research that's there, the better these recommendations will become. So this, as Rhonda said, is kind of the statistics about our user growth. At 1.8 was, I think, when I had been asked to submit the short abstract. We have increased that to 1.9, and as you probably guess, it will hopefully continue like that. And the nice thing about it is, if you look at the email address endings, it's like from all the top universities, and we're pretty proud of that. In terms of data and documents that people organize in their individual private libraries, it's basically a crowdsourced database. The aggregation, or leads to an aggregated database of roughly 285 million documents. Obviously that also changes daily, but it's also pretty impressive. So we don't only have a lot of users, but we also have a lot of users that are quite active. And the nice thing there is that we not only have, so to say, the abstract information about the document, but we also have the social context around it. So what's the profile of the researcher? Where does he come from? What other research is he working with and looking at? Apart from the quantitative numbers showing that we get some traction, we also have some qualitative proof. We have a global network of now 1,500 Mendeley advisors. These are volunteer representatives from Mendeley on the campus. They just think what we're doing is really helpful to them, and they want to support our efforts in spreading access and spreading research, and they support us in that effort, and they're spread around the world, and you can see that as well on Mendeley's homepage, where they're located. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have so much data, we can't potentially even process all that ourselves, so that's why we've developed an API that lets everybody access the data in our database. And what we then, basically that's live since about 1.5 to 2 years, and we now have more than 1,500 developers actually having registered for an API key, and we know of roughly 220 applications, projects that are actively querying our API for different purposes. One example here is readermeter.org, again, developed by non-Mendeley employees, researchers, scientists, developers, and that readermeter.org application pulls information from Mendeley's database and then showcases a researcher's scorecard and impact metrics based on Mendeley's universe. We know that's pretty heavily used. Clank is another application that then lets people individually connect articles with each other and assign values to these connections. So say, this article supports the other article, or this article rejects or builds on. So it's a little bit like a more refined way of creating citations. And if you imagine if the application takes off and it's a crowdsourced network of semantic links across 2 million researchers, I think that becomes hugely valuable. This is a quick graph showing you the traction of the API call. So what initially started as, okay, let's give the data out to researchers, let's see if they at all do something with that, let's see how that develops, and the API calls per month have increased significantly, and that just shows us that we are on the right way. So how about the social aspect around that, and what maybe you can take, what can you maybe take away in terms of thinking as a publisher, where's additional value, what you could do, and it just gives you a little bit of insight into how we are thinking around that, and some thought-provoking ideas. Today, the world looks like, we have a massive amount of content that is being distributed and published by the publishers, by you. On top of that, there's a slightly smaller sliver of metadata, which is provided also by publishers, sometimes by service providers. And then there's one additional layer which starts to appear, I think, which is the social layer. And we are actually one of the companies that captures or tries to capture that social layer to try to surface what's going on in terms of social context with research. This is today, but what happens if tomorrow this changes and we find ourselves in a world, where Facebooks, Twitters, YouTubes, and Pinterests are actually, the biggest sliver, biggest layer, where the social layer kind of dominates the actual content, or is the way through which people discover content, which will also result in the fact that, Facebook on Twitter is a mashup of existing content that's already there, in combination with, some sort of self-produced content, comments from research users in that case. But then the result is the content and not the other way around. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know, but that's certainly a way to look at it. And the other part to that is then, if that becomes more important, how can we make sure that we capture the activity there, and how can we track the importance of what's going on there? And then we get into the fields of altmetrics, total impact, which are all initiatives trying to capture the impact and importance of social activity that goes beyond the pure citation metric. So if we say it's all embedded in social and social becomes more important, what could be potential applications, and how, in a system like Mendeley, could that work? In our case, what we allow, again, we have a very open approach, let people, embed, for example, a public group that is a list of references, a reading list basically, and there's a researcher that who has his own blog, and he embeds a list of documents that are relevant to that blog posting. So again, we don't require people to always be on Mendeley. We allow, atomization of content in that case. And then you can see, people are starting to comment on that and probably find that useful. So I believe, if we allow atomization and reuse of content, then we allow value creation through sharing and embedding. And I'm not convinced that the current ways of accessing content and distributing content are really supporting such a workflow. Another example is you have the homepage of the New York Times, and somebody has developed a Chrome plugin that is querying Mendeley's database, sending some keywords back to the API, and then getting relevant research articles for that New York Times article right into the face of the consumer and user, so to say. So if you see, this is an article about retiree benefits for the military could face cuts, and then you will see some relevant research articles. And our aim then is to obviously give more context around that article on Mendeley and eventually redirect traffic to the publisher and allow people to discover the content and hopefully get access to that, which is after the discovery the second step. Again, why do we think this is important, that we should allow people to discover and engage with content more heavily than we have seen it in the past? Because this is a statistic from Bernstein Research, who are heavily involved in looking at our market, and that's one of their statements where they say usage or usage statistics compared to cost per user is one of the most important factors determining library subscriptions. So, what we want to do is we want to help actually increase that usage. But again, I think, apart from the technology, there are probably other things we need to look at, atomization of content. How can we get better access to researchers, because not everybody has access to that, and so forth. And we are already engaged in discussing with certain publishers. We have a couple of agreements with publishers, and we are now exploring that area as well. So, to the third part of the presentation, I don't know how much time do I have left? 5 minutes, perfect. So then I will just showcase a little bit what an actual product, a monetizable product, looks like in the context of what we do. And this is Mendeley Institutional Edition, and we have a partnership with Sweats. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with them, but they are a kind of library subscription vendor, and they want to move a little bit more into this knowledge management analytics space, and we have a partnership with them where we work with them in terms of distribution and marketing, and we provide the product, and they go out to the libraries and librarians and present the product jointly with some Mendeley staff and explain what it actually means. So the Mendeley Institutional Edition is a combination of two things. One is we provide end-user licenses for the smallest, so to say, end-user license pack. Mendeley has a freemium model, tiered model, and the smallest pricing point or smallest pack is included for all FTEs at that institution. And then in combination to that, we sell or bundle a data dashboard for the librarian, so that the librarian can then see actually how researchers at that institution are interacting with content. And it basically consists of 4 items: reading, publishing, impact, and social. Reading really shows the librarian how are people reading content, meaning how many articles and which articles have people added to their individual libraries. And you can see then, for example, a graph over time has usage overall or article usage overall increased. But then you can go down and actually see what is the most read journal, most read meaning most often added document to users' libraries overall on the institutional basis. And here you can see, in that example, it's +1. And we try to combine that with the holdings information of the institution, meaning we can show whether the institution actually has a full text subscription to that journal or not. Here the second example is monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society, and you will see there's the full text badge, so to say, missing, which points the librarian to the fact, hey, there's a journal being heavily read or heavily used at our institution, but we don't provide full text access to that journal. So it helps the librarian to understand how can we provide better access to content that are people interacting with. You can then also compare journals individually. You can drill down by member discipline. You can focus on a time period and so forth. So that's about reading. Here you can then compare, for example, two journals and how that has evolved over time. The second part is publishing. In which outlets do our researchers actually publish, and how does that evolve over time? Do they publish more in Science? Do they publish more in Nature, just as an example? Have they published more in Science last year than this year? How has that changed over time? How many articles have we published overall? And again, you can drill down by journals, and then you will, for example, be able to see, okay, we have a lot of researchers publishing in the journal, let's say Nature again, but we don't provide full text access to that. So funny coincidence, I think that would be, because if researchers publish in those journals and you as a librarian don't provide access to that journals, I think it's a kind of discrepancy. You can also see who are then the people who have published the most based on the absolute number of publications. Then the third part is, based on this amount of publication output, what is the impact of that? So what is readership for these articles look like? And here you can see that as well over time, and then you can see, for example, first the member who has the most publications in that case is not the same person who has the most readers. So we can then show, how many readers do the publications have that the researchers at your institution have published, and where are they based? What is their status? Are they PhD students? Are they professors? And what is their discipline? And again, you can drill down by discipline, by time, and so forth. And lastly, the tab social, so to say, where we provide insights into which public groups researchers are, where they're engaging, where they're having discussions, for you as a librarian to take a look and maybe, see if you can help, if you can join. Maybe somebody is trying to get access to content or document and he can't, and you as a librarian can, so to say, help. So that's the kind of idea behind Mendeley Institutional Edition. And obviously, as we have spoken to librarians, we've also spoken to publishers, and then publishers have said, hey, it would be fantastic if we could have similar insights for our journals where we publish. How are being journals read at the institutions where we sell to? And that's something we are looking now into, and I guess the result will be something similar. And we're more than happy to kind of keep talking. If you have specific ideas, request, and that's why I'm here. So please join me in that conversation. And that's kind of my presentation. So I hope you liked it, and if you have further questions, just let me know afterwards.